Hello and welcome to Footy Talk with Jay Clark and Lee Montagna. The 2024 season here upon us, and we are breaking down all the sides as they lead up to the regular season. He's the best analyst in the business, Lee Montagna. We're going to start with the Bombers. They are always a fascination, always big news. Been a long time, Joey, since they've won a final. Are you on board the Bombers? Is this the year they can finally crack the 8 and take a scalp? Because they had a busy trade period. They loaded up, as they say, Joey. Where have you got the Bombers this year?
I want to be a believer. I want to be a buyer of the Bombers.
Yes.
I like them. I like their list.
Yes.
But I can't until I can't until I see it. You've got to trust them first.
Mm-hmm.
But look, again, they were 8-5 at round 13.
Yep.
They were moving the ball well. They were defending differently. They were defending deep in their back 50, but they were defending okay.
Yep.
And then for whatever reason, the back half of last year, it fell apart completely. They won 3 of their last 10.
Yep.
2 of those wins were North Melbourne by 9 points and West Coast by a point. And they got pumped in games.
Yep.
How did that happen? Why did that happen? I don't know. They confuse me. I'm glad I'm not an Essendon supporter because they would drive me nuts. But you're right. I like the additions. I think Ben Mackay, I am one that rates him. I think you'll see the best of Ben Mackay at Essendon.
And he's the big body they need back there. Remember, Hawkins absolutely tore him apart in the MCG 8 goals last year. So he's a big body. I don't think he's Darcy Moore, but I think he can hold down an end.
And the flow and effect for Laverde and Ridley can then play different roles, and everybody else back there, Redmond.
Yeah.
Gresham, I think, adds a bit of talent to the front half.
Yeah.
I like that pickup as well. But
you
for
like
me,
Goldstein supporting.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I think that he'll play.
Dersma, can Dersma play?
Dersma. Yeah, I think he's another one as well. I don't know if he's a needle mover at this stage, but again, you can't fault him for filling your depth with some more talent there. But they do have a midfield issue for me. And when I talk about midfield issue, it's still a concern for them, their midfield game. But what's their best mix? What's the combination with the midfield?
Because you've got 10 different midfielders.
Exactly. So they have to figure out what the best combination is.
Is it Merritt? I don't think it's Dylan Shield.
It's not Dylan Shield. Are you giving more opportunity to Hobbs and Sardis?
Yep.
Sam Durham, who is a fan of, we all like Sam Durham. Does he play more inside?
Yep.
Caldwell and Setterfield are those
Parrish.
bigger bodies.
Yep.
So that's going to be a watch for me. The other one is about these youngsters, Cox, Perkins, Reed. Lots spoken of them. Do they come on?
Yep.
There's still a lot there that we're looking to see with Essendon. Again, 18th in the competition for pressure last year, 18th for winning the ball back off the opposition. That is things that can change automatically. That's a bit of a desire and an effort and a system element to it as well. But for me, it's up to their leaders now. A lot of talk about Essendon. We're sick of it. We want this. It's up to the leaders when the footy's on and things get tough, whether it's in-game or in-season. Can the likes of Laverde and Wright and Langford and McGrath and Ridley, Parrish, Redmond, Merritt, the leaders, take a hold of this footy club and take them where they want to go?
You mentioned the forward pressure and the intercept game. That's the modern game.
Yep.
They're the keys to the modern game. That's where Brad Scott would have his highlighter out. That's where he'd want the upside. I love that you mentioned the draftees, Joey, because I think as much as the recruits have been the big story at Essendon, this is the year.
There's upside. There's upside.
Well, I think Perkins can play. I just don't know what his position
Yep.
is. Is he half forward? Is he on ball? I don't think he's grabbed it by the horns in the midfield yet. There's so much competition for spots in the midfield. Reed is crucial. Is that they brought him to be
Big raps this summer.
Replacement for Hurley. They haven't been able to get him right. That off-field team needs to get his body right. And then, of course, Cox. Well, they call him the unicorn, but is he hard enough? Is he?
Where's his best spot?
Well, he has been an outside runner. You remember his first season, he was on the wing, up and down. I think under Brad Scott, they're going to want him to put the hard hat on and go in and win a bit more of his own footy. And that's what's going to take his game to a new level. I don't think in the modern game you can just sit outside exclusively. Do we still have those pure outsides?
100%. Yes, we do.
You
Yeah, all the
so he
wingmen,
can be that?
Yeah, he could.
He could?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just not sure he's your wingman. Is that where his best spot's going to be? Is it intercepting half back? I'm not sure what is. That'll be a watch for me. How Brad Scott tries to get the best out of Nick Cox, because he certainly has the talent.
Andrew McGrath in a leadership position under Zach Merritt. You mentioned he's out of contract. I think if they have a wobbly start to the season, you'll see a lot of clubs go chips in for Andrew McGrath and really try and tempt him out. So that will be a big test of his loyalty. Essendon trying to keep their players after a few departures in recent years. But I feel like those draftees, that is going to be an absolutely big story and a big issue for the Bombers if they can get that pop. What about Adelaide, Joey? They probably could have been playing finals if it wasn't for a little score review late last year. They got the party tricks forward. They got the kids. They got some tools there. Matthew Nick's under a little bit of pressure. He still hasn't been re-signed at this point, so I think maybe the Crows are waiting to see what happens there. You think he'd be good enough to get the job done in a new contract. Is this the year that Adelaide jump into the top 8, Joey?
Well, it's interesting with Matthew Nicks because if you look at the progression of Adelaide, they've gone the last 4 years: 3 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, 11 wins.
Yeah.
They are heading in the right trajectory. My concern with Adelaide this season is a lot of rebuilds don't always continue to go linear. You don't always go from 3 to 7 to 8 to 11 to 14.
Yep.
It rarely happens.
Yep.
There's normally a dip year
Yep.
where things, you've still got growing pains.
Geelong 06.
Geelong 06. Even Richmond, before they won their premierships, had that dip year. Melbourne, before they won their premierships. And
Yep.
we've even seen it with a team like Fremantle and Sydney,
Yep.
who has had spikes and then all of a sudden have had dips. It's very, very common. So I'm just sort of holding fire a bit on the Crows this year, just for that fact. I think that maybe they are still going through some growing pains. I think they've still got some, concerns defensively. It's
Yep.
a young, inexperienced side.
Yes.
Their midfield, do they have enough depth in there? I believe, Rochelle and Rankin might go through there more, but you're taking away a bit of your forward power. I still think they're trending in the right direction.
Yep.
Maybe not this year. Maybe it might be a year of growing pains, because when you look at, some of the numbers from last year, and if you want to go a bit sort of half glass empty, they were 2-8 in games decided by 13 points or less. They lost a lot of the close games. They were 2-8 on the road. So these are all things that young teams go through that you need to work your way through. But then if you look at the half glass full, they lost to Collingwood by 1 and 2 points in 2 games. They lost to Melbourne by 4 points at the MCG.
Hard to beat at
Should have
home.
beaten Sydney.
Yep.
But their form at the Adelaide Oval was off the charts.
Yep.
They were dominant at the Adelaide Oval. They were a big team there. So I still think they've got high ceiling, and I think they've got some young players that have got some real special traits about them that can get them there. Is it this year? I'm not sure.
Other than Dawson, who do you think is their best player at Adelaide? Question without notice.
Taylor Walker is a superstar. He's been one of the best, but we're bringing in his age into consideration. So for me, it's the next tier now. It's got to be Rochelle and Rankin.
Yep.
It's got to be Fogarty, Thilthorpe. One of them's got to go to another level. One of the backline players, Michael Annie or Miller, there's a lot of talent in there. But I just think without Duday, without Nick Murray in defence, it might be tough going for them. We know they can score, particularly at the Adelaide Oval.
Yep.
Interesting year for them.
I think that's a great call, Joey. I'm with you there, no doubt about that. Western Bulldogs, speaking of headlines and stories, it has been such a fascinating summer down there at the kennel, because I spoke to someone towards the end of last season, Joey. I said, how's your year been? And the person said to me, it's been really tense. It's been a tense footy club. And you know what? That is what we've all seen. There's been anxiety at this football club. So they come in, they review, they rip a Band-Aid off a little bit with Chris Grant as footy manager. He changes his role. They get Matthew Egan, who's probably one of the best blokes in footy, to come in and ride shotgun alongside Luke Beveridge. We know the pressure is on him. It's a soft start for the Bulldogs, so I think it's they should get away okay. Big contract call for Bailey Smith. You've always said that we've overrated the Bulldogs list. And now Sanders comes in. You think we've got ahead of ourselves on the Bulldogs list?
I think it's the conversation about the talent on the list. Their top 10, absolutely, is elite. No one is questioning their top 10. It's probably more the depth. There are probably always, when you watch the Bulldogs, 4, 5, 6 players that sort of raise eyebrows. You think, is he, how good of a player is he? Why is he in their best team?
O'Donnell.
There's a whole bunch of names, to be honest. Although O'Donnell is one that I've heard over this summer that has really impressed them as a key defender that they think will play every week. So maybe Luke Beveridge saw something in him that a few of us couldn't see right at the start. You're right about the Western Bulldogs. Where are they at? They were 9-6 last year at round 16, then lost 5 of their last 8.
Yeah.
Their profile is pretty solid. Without the footy, they weren't too bad. Their clearance game, we know, is strong. With the footy was their issue. So for me, it's a bit of their method. So they're a great clearance team, but they don't score from clearance because they don't come out of clearance with the same pop as the top teams, like a Collingwood and some other sides. From the link. They sort of handball it around, but which way do they go? They go sideways and backwards. Their ball movement out of defence, it's a bit poor. Are they a handball, fast-moving team? Are they a control team? I want to see a bit more of a identifiable brand with the Western Bulldogs this year. I think for everyone's sake. I think it even feels for the players' sake. Yeah. Some consistency in role, consistency in their method. Oh. And if they do that, I think that gives them a chance to be a consistent team. Because at the moment, they've been inconsistent. And I think it's because inconsistent roles, inconsistent with their
Yeah.
game
He
style.
spins the magnets.
And that's part of, I think, the issue with the Western Bulldogs.
And in 2006 in the Premiership year, the handball club and these different, moves and changes and whiz-bang tactics, etc. I think maybe caught a few by surprise.
Yeah, it
and
worked. Yep.
we love the novelty of it all. But I think over a long period of time, you're right, there has been some frustration. Do you know what I feel like is the big question for the Bulldogs this year, Joey?
What is it?
I like what you said about the brand and the method, because you're right, they are a good clearance team. Why don't they score from clearance? Is it a happy football club? I don't know that it's a happy football club, right? And when things are good, and we've seen it with Collingwood, and we've seen it at Richmond in the past, right? When the blokes want to be there, they get the best out of themselves. I reckon a few of those Bulldogs guys are playing a bit unders. We know the talent there. Is Norton an A grader? Is Norton an A grade?
We still have all these questions. Where's Sam Darcy's best spot? What's their best forward mix? What's their best back mix?
Is Rory lobbing their team?
I don't know. And who are their half backs? Because they've bought Nick Caulfield in from St Kilda, and they've got Bailey Dale, and they've got Ed Richards. And they've got Taylor Duray and Caleb Daniel. Where's Caleb Daniel play? Is Adam Treloar an insider or is he an outsider? There is a lot of questions with the Dogs. They're a fascinating watch, but I completely agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first 6 weeks, there will be tension because all eyes will be on the Western Bulldogs.
They will want to lose
weeks.
a couple of soft ones.
That's right. So you talk about it's a soft start. So Melbourne round 1, then they've got Gold Coast and West Coast, and then Geelong, Essendon.
Yeah.
So it does sound like a soft start, but if you drop one or two of those
pressure
to a Gold Coast or an Essendon, or
then they become the big story over the first month of the season.
And are they strong enough as a club? Are they united enough? Are they tight enough as a club to get through it?
Not yet.
No
way.
That's interesting.
No way. I think there are some fractures. There are some fractures in that footy club. We've seen them. Can they be exposed or can they sort their stuff out? It'll be interesting. If you had to put in a time capsule, you think Tim English stay or go, Joey?
Good question. I will say stay, just to not upset the Dogs fans.
But
he's going to get a massive offer from West Coast.
Of course he is. Of course he is, right? And I think you're going to make that call half season if it's a happy football club, if he likes rocking up to the joint. I don't think it's going to be a dollar issue because you're going to get big money
never
anyway.
Is a dollar. For free agents, it's if you're happy at the club you're at,
yes.
even if you get offered more money, you stay, unless it's huge money that's you're too good to refuse, like Gary Ablett got to, But otherwise, you would generally stay.
Bailey Smith,
got to be happy.
Stay or go.
Oh. I'm not saying go because I don't want. No, I'm just saying stay as well. I don't want to upset Dogs fans yet. It's too early in the season to upset Dogs fans.
I'm not sure about that one.
Ooh,
I think the Cats and every other club are absolutely sniffing around. Western Bulldogs fans, I tell you what, put your seatbelts on. It's going to be a big year. We're going to finish with Sydney today. I feel like Sydney climbed back up the ladder. Joey, they've got Taylor Adams and Brodie Grundy, the former Pies. You mentioned the Redeem team. I think there's a big redemption story for those two. Have a chip on their shoulder and a big point to prove. On a small ground, I really feel like these are two great pickups for the Swans and they can drive them forward. You're buying the Sydney stock.
Hardest team for me to assess out of all the teams to figure out, are they a top 4 team or do they miss finals? Because last year, they won 12 and a half games, and they just snuck in. But if you remember, the Adelaide game where the ball was called a point when it was a goal, they should have lost that. And they should have lost to North Melbourne when a player ran onto the field.
Oh, of course.
And that was all over. That was in North Melbourne.
Buddy kicked the goal.
Game. So they lose those 2 games.
They
finished 13th.
Yep.
And it may be a different thought about the Sydney Swans. But you're right. They've added some players because they've identified their contest game and clearance game has been an issue.
Yep.
So they've specifically targeted players for that role.
Grundy's still an A grader for mine. He's been an A grade pickup in a trade period where there weren't a whole lot of A graders. Schultz probably the biggest pickup. I felt like the Grundy thing, even for Brodie Grundy, flew under the radar a little bit. He is going to be at a mountain of stoppages this year, isn't he? So I think he provides a real pillar of strength and a person who you and I both love, Errol Goulden, who is probably their best player, or was their best player, won the best and fairest last year. How much is this man worth, do you think, Joe? Is he about to become $1 million a year player?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I'd be paying him $1 million to get him to my club. Absolutely. Sydney, I agree. I think that they play the right style of footy. They play pretty much a turnover game. They move the ball well. They're the number 1 pressure team.
Yep.
For me, just some little question marks about now their forward line, the big 3, without Franklin. All of a sudden, McDonald gets the number 1 defender, Marty McLean, that combination. Down the other end, Tom McCartan and Blakey are sort of undersized key defenders.
Yep.
McCartan, hopefully, fingers crossed, he stays fit and healthy, but he's got some slight concerns as well.
Yep.
They're my only issues with the Sydney Swans. I'm not sure where to put them. I think I've got them just around the 8 in that mix with a lot of teams. I think their fate rests with their former All-Australian stars. So if Isaac Heaney, Tom Papley, Mills when he comes back, the Grundy and Adams, the two guys that have been All-Australians, if those guys get to their All-Australian form, they take Sydney back into the top 4. But they slightly frustrating for me. They had poor years last year. Or not poor years, but not to their best. Heaney, Papley, Mills, those sorts of guys. So there's a lot there to like.
Well, Mills out with the shoulder, and you've always had the asterisk on Isaac Heaney. I've fallen into the trap of pumping up Isaac Heaney in the past. You've always pulled the handbrake up on him a little bit. Last year was up and down once again. That has been a fine preview for those clubs with the best analysts in the business, Lee Montagna. Hit like, subscribe, follow us on Footy Talk. We have got a massive season ahead with all the latest news and views. We'll be back with more previews soon.